Hello, bookworms. Welcome back to the Bonafide Bookworm. I'm your host, Rachel, and if you're here to read along with me and improve your English. So, a few little things. I do have another book review. I had mentioned that while I was traveling, I read 2 books, and the other book that I read, I'm sorry, one of my dogs is squeaking a toy. I hope you can't hear that. But one of the books I read was Barbara Corcoran's Shark Tales. She is from Shark Tank, and I've never really watched that show. I know what it's about and all that. I just haven't watched it. I enjoyed her book. One thing about her book, it seemed like that everything just referenced back to how she was as a kid, and her mom would give her like these words of wisdom, and somehow it applied to her current situation. So I was really afraid it was just going to be the standard like book setup, like just, oh, and somehow her mom has the answer to everything, basically. However, it did incorporate some other aspects where like she messed up as a kid, did something she shouldn't have, and then also in her adult life, it also did cover like, I think it was Capital Inc. or Capital Investment, something like that. She went to speak. They'd invited her to speak for them in front of like 800 people, and it did not go as planned. So I appreciated that there were stories in there about the failures. And she also deals with Donald Trump in that book, which was interesting. And I haven't Googled anything like to see what kind of terms they're on now, but I'm very curious to know if they still do any business together or not, or if this ruined their business relationship or what. I would hope not. He seems like he just goes based off of business, separates the business from the person, but I'm curious to see that, so I'll look that up and let you know next time. Other quick thing that I forgot when I welcomed the new bookworms, when I was editing, I forgot to put a nice little welcome bookworms text up there or banner, so I apologize. So I'm going to do that this time. Again, welcome new bookworms. I hope y'all enjoy the channel, and I'm going to plug my Ivy and Finn channel as usual. That one isn't really on a schedule though. I don't post Tuesdays and Thursdays on there. It's really just for fun for me and for other people, just to see the dogs. Yeah, check it out if you haven't. They're cute. I did post a video of Ivy's dad. So Ivy, she is my Shorkie, and she was given to me from my parents. So they actually have her parents. They have her mom and her mom and dad, or her mom. So just kind of fun that they're a little family. And when I went traveling, I went back and got to see them, so that was really fun. And I got some good videos. I'll have to post a video of Tazzy. Tazzy is the mom of Ivy, and her name is actually Tasmanian Devil because when they got her as a puppy, she was black all over, and she had little tan spots on her ears, and I kept saying she's just like a Tasmanian Devil, like the babies. And I suggested that name, and also she terrorized Ozzy, Ivy's dad, when she first met him, and it's hilarious. My mom's going to try and see if she can find some of those old videos, and I'll try and post those once she finds those. So, back to her book. We are on Untamed Seas by Deborah, Kiley, and Meg Noonan. And when we left off, they're still in the middle of the storm. They called the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard said there was going to be a plane flying over. They're trying to signal them, trying to say, hey, here we are. They need to get Meg to a hospital. She's really bruised, I think back here along her side. So she could have like kidney damage. I mean, it sounds pretty bad, pretty rough. She can't hardly move without being in pain. So the storm is still raging. They think that the plane saw them, so they're feeling a little bit better. They're just trying to keep the boat afloat because, like, I think the front half of it is going into the ocean, which is terrifying. I don't know how you could sleep, but she'd been on deck for, I don't know, something crazy, like 12 hours or something in all this storm. So you got to sleep sometime. So she's trying, Debbie, our main character, she has gone below to try to get some sleep. They left Mark up at the helm, although he's, he appears to be sober right now, so that's good. And yeah, that's where we left off. She's down below sleeping, the storm's still raging. They think that help is coming, and we'll pick up there. So we are on chapter 5, page 83. Come on, we're going. Someone was screaming, jolting me out of a deep sleep. Was it time to go on watch again? I felt as if I'd just closed my eyes. We're going now. It was Brad. He had me by the arm and was dragging me out of my bunk. When my feet hit the floor, I was almost up to my knees in water. Go, Brad shouted and pushed me toward the galley. What was going on? Why was he pushing me? Then I understood. The Coast Guard must have come, or one of the merchant ships. Oh, I forgot about, there's also 2 merchant ships in the vicinity, and they're supposed to be looking for them too. Sorry. Then I understood the Coast Guard must have come, or one of the merchant ships. Staggering toward the main cabin, I heard a strange rushing noise, as if the ship were right on top of us. And then I saw water cascading into the cabin, through the port side windows. My God, had they hit us? Had they smashed the windows? I saw Mark splashing through the rising water, coughing, his eyes huge. Then Meg was in the doorway, rigid with shock. She opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Come on, Meg, Brad yelled. John came up behind her, glanced at the flooding cabin, and shoved Meg forward toward the companionway. Then he lunged for the radio as Brad pushed me toward the stairs. Mayday, mayday, we're sinking, we're sunk, John was hollering. Why bother with the radio when the ship is already here, I wondered. We didn't have time to screw around. The water was nearly shoulder deep. I crawled up the companionway behind Brad, fighting to keep my balance as the boat hurled down the face of a wave. We both made it to the deck. But where was the ship? Where were the people who had come to rescue us? There was nothing, only the monster seas and the freight train wind and the ugly sky. The Coast Guard wasn't here for us. No one was here. Not off our port side, not off our starboard. To stand there with the deck dropping out from under my feet and the water pouring down and seeing nothing. The blood rushed from my head and my legs buckled. I was dizzy with the sickening truth. Trashman was sinking and we were alone. And then it all became a terrifying slow-motion dream. I saw Mark dive for the compartment at the stern where the life raft filled with emergency supplies was stowed in a fiberglass canister the size of a giant suitcase. I saw Brad on top of the cabin, waves breaking over him, struggling to untie the rubber Zodiac, which is still lashed to the deck. I saw the muscles in his arms as he dug into the iron-hard knots that were being pulled tighter by the force of the sinking boat. I heard the Zodiac burst free and I saw Brad swimming after it. He pounced on it as it stalled in the leeward shoulder of a wave. A dark tower of water hanging above the deck came crashing down on Meg and me, dragging us into the rigging of the main mast. I was underwater and then I was up, and I could hear Meg screaming before we were both sucked back toward the stern by another surge. In the lull between waves, I managed to swim away. Treading water and riding the enormous swells, I could see Mark with his arms wrapped around the life raft canister and Meg being lifted forward by another wave. She screamed again as she slammed into the rigging. When she washed back across the deck, I saw blood on her arms. The sweatpants she had been wearing were floating free. Meg, I shouted, swim away from the boat. I can't. Swim away. Wait for a wave to come, then swim away. I watched her get dragged back into the shrouds. I knew she didn't understand. She didn't know enough about waves to time them so she could get away. I swam back to the boat to try to help her. When I got close, she lunged at me. I screamed and tried to pry her hands off my shoulders. Damn it, Meg, you're going to drown us both. Somehow I pulled her away from the rigging, and we were both in the water, free of the boat. I saw Brad holding onto the Zodiac, and I began swimming madly for it. I grabbed onto the side of the pitching, overturned rubber dinghy, and then Meg was there. Then John appeared next to Brad. The four of us clung to the line threaded around the gunwale, stunned by the sight of the sinking boat, and Mark, still at the stern, fighting with the life raft canister. It looked as if it was going to pull him under. Then, in one instant, the canister exploded, and the life raft filled with air. The wind caught the raft, and Mark held on, dragged behind it like a fallen water skier who could not let go of the tow line. I held my breath and watched him fight for the raft. If he gets into that boat, we'll never see him again, I thought. He won't come back for us. A tremendous gust ripped the raft from Mark's grasp. It blew through the rigging, skimmed the top of a wave, and vanished. Mark swam hard for the Zodiac. I couldn't hold it, he sputtered when he pulled himself up next to Brad. I couldn't hold it. Brad ducked under the Zodiac. I shouted for him, but got no answer. I tried again. Nothing. Come on, Brad. I can't lose you. I can't be out here without you. Brad! No answer. Brad! I'm over here, he finally said. I'm okay. Come back to this side, I shouted. I wanted him where I could see him. No, I'm going to stay over here. We had drifted 50 feet from Trashman. She was heeled over so far that her masts were almost lying on the water. Half the deck was submerged. A wave knocked her upward, another one slammed into her hull, and she somehow managed to right herself. Her mast shot straight up into the air as if she were making one final stab at survival. We're all gonna fucking die, Mark shouted. We're all gonna fucking die. It's all over, John repeated, as if he were in a trance. We dropped into a trough, then rose to the summit of another wave. Now we could see just the tips of Trashman's two masts as they went under. Finally, all that was left of her was the top of the main mast. I watched in horror as that last bit vanished, the sinking that had taken no more than 2 minutes, and now there was only the raging sea. We're all gonna fucking die, Mark screamed. Shut up, Mark, I shouted back. Shut up. I hung on. That was all I could do. Hang on while the dinghy rode the insane contours of the sea. Every wave threatened to yank me away from it. My palms burned. My God, my hands are on fire. I can't hold it. We slid down into a trough, into a momentary calm. Am I really here? I thought. I felt so small, so helpless, so exposed. And it had all happened in a heartbeat. Brad had dragged me from my bunk, and then what? Had the life raft really blown away? Had I really just watched Trashman be swallowed up by the sea? I could still hear Mark screaming, but his voice seemed muffled and far away, as if his head was underwater and the words were bubbling up from below. Beneath the steady high roar of the wind, I was conscious of the rapid-fire slamming of my heart against my chest. I pressed my forehead against the Zodiac as it climbed another moving hill. I could smell rubber and taste salt on my lips. I became keenly aware of the warmth of the water. Is the water supposed to feel this warm, or is this what dying feels like? I looked up again, and though I could still see Mark and John and Meg, they seemed featureless and vague, as though I was viewing them through fogged glass. An enormous wave dragged us up into the sky, and water hit me in the face, filling my mouth and nose. The salt stung my throat. I couldn't breathe. This is it, I thought. This is the end. I felt I was being drawn up into the furious, beating wings of some giant prehistoric bird, and I was powerless, limp, invisible. I was dead. No, I was still alive, but alive in the middle of the ocean, with nothing to hold on to but an 11-foot-long inflatable rubber boat. My God, a boat of air. Another wave broke over the dinghy, and I fought to keep my grip. I could see the others struggling in the turbulence. When we dropped into the quiet canyon between waves, I screamed again for Brad. Talk to me, Brad, I hollered. What? I worked my way, hand over hand, to the other side of the dinghy to be next to him. What happened? I asked. We fell, he said. He wouldn't look at me. We fell off a wave. I saw it happen. We fell off and we landed on our side, and the water came crashing through the windows. I saw it happen. I felt the gathering power of another wave, and the Zodiac started climbing again. Then there was an explosion of water, and the dinghy was torn out of my hands. I slammed backward into the water. When I was at last able to surface, I could see the Zodiac stalled against the wall of the next huge swell. I stroked as hard as I could, but as I got close, the dinghy was picked up again and flung another 20 feet away. I didn't see any of the others. I screamed for Brad and got a mouthful of seawater. Fighting panic, coughing, praying, I swam again. The muscles in my arms and thighs started to cramp. I lunged for the dinghy and caught the line with the tips of my fingers. As another wave tried to peel me off, I closed my hand around the line, and the Zodiac carried me with it on its wild ride. I screamed again for Brad, then for Meg, and John, and Mark. I heard Meg calling my name. She was swimming for the dinghy. Then John, Mark, and Brad came up and grabbed onto the side. We had all made it. "Let's turn it over," Mark said, straining to be heard. "We've got to get in it." Brad and I lifted the windward side, while the other three held the line and let the wind carry the Zodiac over. It slapped down onto the water with a ringing thud. We helped Meg climb in. Her legs looked as if they had been slashed by a razor-clawed tiger. Startled, Brad looked at me. I mouthed, "The rigging." The rest of us scrambled aboard. The air was much colder than the water, and I started to shake violently. We rose up, and then just as we crested, the Zodiac flipped, and again I was tumbling, being held underwater, fighting for air. When I resurfaced, my head hit the floor of the dinghy, and I went down and came up, hitting the floor again. I was trapped. I clawed at the rubber, my lungs tightening. Then I felt the surging sea building under me, and I was carried up and thrown forward. When I surfaced, my head was free. Meg shouted my name, and I turned and saw the dinghy. I swam over and grabbed the line, then closed my eyes and prayed as I had never prayed before. We were on the wind-lashed summits, and then we were in the still canyons. I would be torn from the dinghy and then swimming again, swimming for my life, swimming and praying, until I found the hard rubber and reached up and closed my hand around the lifeline. Minutes went by, maybe 5, maybe 45. I was trembling uncontrollably. I wanted to stop. I wanted everything to stop. I could feel the heat being drawn from my body and the strength being drained from my legs. "I'm so fucking cold," Mark said through chattering teeth when the dinghy settled into a trough. "Me too," Meg whispered. "We have to get warm somehow. We can't stay like this," I said. "We're better off in the water," Brad said. "Yeah, the air's cold as shit," Mark said. "We have to stay in the water." "The dinghy won't stay upright anyway," Brad said as we were carried back up into the tumult. When the Zodiac dropped back down, John said, "I want to turn the dinghy over. I want to get in." "I'm not getting in the dinghy," Mark said. "It's too cold, John," Brad said, "and we can't keep it upright." "I want to get in," John insisted. When I was 15, my mother had sent me to a girls' boarding school in Colorado that taught outward bound survival skills. Why hadn't I paid more attention? What the hell had they said about hypothermia? I knew one thing: the wind was our biggest enemy right now. Whatever body heat we had would be stolen by the wind. We had to shelter ourselves somehow. "Maybe we could go under the dinghy," I said, thinking out loud. "You mean hang on under there?" Brad said. "I don't know, maybe," I said. "We'd be out of the wind," Brad said. "Under?" Meg asked. "We have to try something," I said, as we rose to the top of a wave and the wind blasted us once more. When we were able to talk, Brad said he thought we should try getting under the boat. Everyone agreed to try it. Brad went under, then resurfaced and said, "I think it will work, come on." We all ducked down and came up under the Zodiac. I grabbed the line and treaded water to keep myself up. The odd reddish light made our strained faces look like ghoulish masks. I could just make out the features of the rubber boat: the aluminum floorboards, a black rubber spray cover stretched across the bow, a wire meant to secure the motor when it was being used. I could hear the water slapping against the boat. It was strange. The waves sounded no bigger than those left in the wake of a speedboat. It was deceptively peaceful under there, like being in the clear eye of a hurricane. "What do you think?" asked Brad. "At least we're out of the wind." "Where's Meg going off to?" Mark asked. "She went out. She's claustrophobic," John said. "We have to get her back in," Brad said. Brad and John ducked back out of the overturned dinghy, leaving Mark and me alone. We glared at each other. God help me, but I hated him. I hated him for letting the life raft go, for being so weak. I hated him for walking down the dock that day in Annapolis, for walking into my life. At that moment, I could have dug his eyes out with my fingernails. I looked away. In a few seconds, Brad and John popped back in without Meg. Debbie, try talking to her, John said. She won't come in. I ducked out. Meg was hanging from the side, her long dark hair pasted to her face, her teeth chattering loudly. You ought to get under, Meg, I said. It will be better. No way. But it will be warmer, and we'll be together. We have to keep an eye on each other. I can't breathe under there. I'm just going to stay out here, she said. She won't come, I said when I resurfaced inside. She says she can't breathe under here. The four of us hung on in silence and rode the undulating sea. The waves slapped at the rubber. Do you think anyone heard the Mayday? Brad said. I doubt it, John replied. But the Coast Guard knew we were in trouble, Brad persisted. When they realize we missed the 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock calls, they'll know something went wrong. Don't you think? I mean, we had that schedule set up, and I'm sure they're on the way, I said, buoyed by the image of a gleaming white Coast Guard cutter powering straight for us. What do you figure a couple hours from Charleston? Brad said. Couple, maybe 3 or 4 in these seasons, John said. So that would get them here at what, about 5? Brad guessed. I asked Mark what time it was now. He was the only one wearing a watch. What difference does it make? He said. I want to know, that's all. Just tell me. No, it's my fucking watch, and I don't have to tell you anything. Why do you always have to be such a prick? Fuck you, Mark spat back. She just asked you what time it is, John said. I just don't feel like answering every bloody question she asked me, all right? What time is it? What time is it? Who gives a shit what fucking time it is? Anyway, in a little while, the Coast Guard will be here, so it doesn't really matter, Brad said. Yeah, a couple of hours at most, John said. They'll be here. All right, we're going to stop there on page 94, about halfway down. I hope you're enjoying my terrible English accent when I try to read Mark's part. It really is awful. But anyway, I hope y'all have a great day, week, month, year, wherever you're at. I hope it's great, and hope to see you back here next time. Bye.